good morning, good afternoon. This is the Diaspora Talk Show on Civic Space, and I'm Miriam moderating on behalf of Lynn, who will be joining us shortly. On the panel, we have Kharim Ntambi, who is a member of NUP. Washington, we have Albert Bakasara. He calls himself an elder from Toro, but he also lives in Washington, D.C. We have Honorable Simon Mulongo. Simon, you're welcome from Kampala. And then we have Francis Kamuhanda is the coordinator for ANT party. I'll begin with you, Francis, since we are talking about parties. The Minister of Constitutional Affairs announced that the diaspora will eventually be voting in the 2026 elections. How do you feel about it? Are you ready?
Well, thank you, Miriam, and fellow panelists. It's always exciting being on this platform and show and discussing matters of national importance to our country. Back to the question that you have asked. I'm not excited about it because there is nothing for us without us. So if we are to vote, we must fully participate in ensuring that how is the modality, how is it organized? Because I don't want to be hoodwinked in a way that I cast my vote. I don't know how my vote is protected. I don't know who is going to count it, and I don't know how it will be declared. Because I know with the Electoral Commission of Museveni, who is the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, you cast your vote, then he's going to count them the way how he wants. Even you will be surprised to the number that will be declared that is in the diaspora, more than even my luggage will be declared as a voter. So I think well, the idea would be good, but I'm not excited about it because I have not participated in the process of what it entails. So it is important that we as the diaspora community, if we are being considered, then we need to fully participate in, if need be, we need to have our own independent electoral commission to know that we are counting our vote and we are declaring the results or sending them to wherever they want them to be sent in an open system, not the system of what Byabakama used to do. I don't like that, and I wouldn't be excited in terms of that, because that's not how democracy is exercised.
Thank you, Francis. And Kharim, is NUP has the majority voters in diaspora so far. I wonder how you're prepared to go about it. The minister said that they'll be picking a few points, a few voting areas depending on the population of the people in diaspora. For instance, USA has a bigger number of Ugandans living abroad, UK, and maybe a few other states. So are you prepared? Because currently the electoral process is that they are displaying the voter register. So if we are to participate in elections, by this time we should be doing something about our voter cards, registration, and all that stuff. I don't know how they are going to jumpstart the process so that we catch up with the rest of the country. I don't know. I really don't know how they're going to go about it, but it seems that it's going to be trial and error so far. So how is your party preparing?
Thank you, Miriam, and thanks everyone. I think we've had this conversation before here, and I have talked about how unprepared we are for that to happen. For example, saying that most Ugandans in the diaspora, basically in the US and the UK, avoiding places like the UAE, Qatar, Doha, where hundreds of thousands have moved in the past maybe 10 years, would be a cheat, and it wouldn't be fair. Secondly, the electoral roadmap is out already. The voting for youth MPs and PWDs, I think, will be around August. And that one goes through some kind of electoral college that starts from the local council. So that exercise is going to start by at least March. So people are right now looking for young people who will represent them, and people, the PWDs who will be a representative of that constituency. So if the diaspora was supposed to be part of that, at least would have been in the conversation already. There would have been, information distributed by the embassies responsible for this exercise, and there would have been some kind of civic awareness of this exercise, because it's something that, if you're going to participate as a Ugandan, at least there is need for you to know how it is going to be handled. But looking at the roadmap for 2020, actually the elections are not there, and we are just going to do the presidential and local government elections in January of 2026. Most of the activities are going to be done this year. Now, if the diaspora was supposed to be engaged, or if the government wanted the diaspora to be part of this, it would have been the exercise done by last year. In this year, we would be testing the systems. We would be, doing last minute things to see that everybody is ready. But as of now, we are rushing to checking into the voters register, even when we don't know whether our constituencies are there. So if I'm a Ugandan living, let me say, in the DMV, am I checking myself on a register as a person in the diaspora, or as a person from Najanankumbi? How does that happen? Because the register is already out. So this would have been the time for us to confirm, not to ask to add us on, because now if we are going to go back and edit everything for the diaspora, our registration has to be different. Either we are going to do it online, and the logistics of that have not yet been realized. I think we would be remiss if we go into something when we are not prepared. I know there is always a first time for everything, but starting like this doesn't show progress, but it breeds, it looks like we will be breeding chaos. Thank you.
Thank you, Kharim. Honorable Mulongo, what do you think? You are in NRM. You are in the kitchen of things. Is NRM party prepared for the diaspora vote, or you are also being thrown in things that you are not ready for? But being in charge, I'm sure you really have something to say about it. Do you even know the expected voters that you might be having in diaspora, and which areas are going to vote anyway? Because we might even prepare that Washington is voting, USA is voting, and then we don't know whether maybe they pick UK and UAE, or you might even see them picking China or Canada or whatever. So what is the mode of operation? How are they going to go about it, and how is your party prepared since the primaries are coming on?
Thank you, colleagues. I'm not very good at this how I look like, and I'm going to mute my picture. But just I'm going to mute my video. So the issue is, yes, I'm an NRM member, and but I'm not in any structures of the NRM. I'm not a chairman of the local village. I'm not a chairman at anywhere. I don't work with the secretariat. I'm not on SAIC. So I don't have the first-hand information, because I've just returned to the country. And so I do not have really facts. I can only speak in principle. One is that the Constitution is not explicit about diaspora voting. We did not provide for it, neither did we deny it. So it is definitely flexible if the system feels that we respond to the demand. Actually, the demand has always been there for a while now, that we have, at that time when we made the constitution, the pressure was by the diaspora on dual citizenship. And that's what we provided for. But for voting, I think it can be done by secondary legislation. And since it has been, as you stated, announced that they want to do it this time around, then it means that it's good progress, so that we have diaspora, because discussions, as said, have been going on for some time. It will require that we have to amend the Electoral Commissions Act to include provisions for absentee voting, or either voting not necessarily from the country. And then we have also to create clear regulations and mechanisms for registering and verifying diaspora voters. And as a colleague did say, it really will require quite a lot of preparations, which should have started much earlier than now. And then we also need to establish a secure and a transparent system for remote voting. Whether we're going to use postal or electronic voting, this has to be done. So it's very important that all these are in place. And I would imagine that if we are to do the voting, as has been suggested, it means one, we may have in-person voting at, say, diplomatic missions, say every mission, whether it is in the US. Unfortunately, the US is just in Washington. So, and maybe we can use the UN mission as well. But there are people now who are in Ohio. How are they going to vote? Do they have to move from California all the way to vote in Washington or whichever the place is? So I foresee problems, yeah? Because even if it's Ohio, it depends on where you are. Where you're in the, Delaware, or you're in London, whatever it is, you to travel again, it's not easy. Logistics, it means the vote is going to be very expensive to be able to cast one's vote. And the other one is you can use postal voting. I've seen that happen in the US. But in Uganda, since internet came in, I hardly visit the post office. I don't know that it's still even operational. And then how do you ensure that the security of the ballots and so on? And if we choose to do electronic voting, it means we must have secure online platforms that allow the people to vote and participate remotely from wherever they are. So, but remember, even that one, we have cybersecurity concerns, which sometimes limit digital infrastructure in some of the areas that may hamper or delay or slow down the whole exercise. And also, as some colleagues said, up until now we should have had some register of sorts. If you register in Uganda, well, or if you don't register in Uganda, you register somewhere where there is proof of citizenship, where there is registration, where there is residence documentation to prove that you're a resident of that country, and so on. All the things require that they are done. So really, and I agree with a colleague who said that up to now there should have been some civic education where you we have these institutions responsible, the Electoral Commission, to expedite the creation of the diaspora voting framework, or maybe collaborating with civil society organization to raise awareness, and so on and so forth. So really, to me, I see some significant challenges, which may include logistics and financial issues, because the voting out there would require quite a bit of money and human resources, which the government may not necessarily have. Already the budget to the Electoral Commission was slashed. It is actually less. And all that. So to me, it's a very good idea because it has been on. It is important that people exercise their rights wherever they are. And this could be organized maybe through the missions, though for big countries like the US could still remain a challenge to those who are in far states. If you're in Alaska, how do you go about it? And so on. So really, it's a welcoming issue, but I personally am not sure how it is going to be done, because I have no clarity as to how it is going to be expedited. So back to you, Madam Moderator.
Albert, what do you think about the vote, the diaspora vote? We've been advocating for the vote for a longest time. I think the challenge of Uganda, as usual, it's like waiting, delaying everything, and waiting for the last minute, and then they just create chaos, sort of, especially as far as elections is concerned, because the court ruling about the diaspora vote was in 2021. So the Electoral Commission and the government have had 5 years to prepare for this vote, if at all they wanted the diaspora to vote. And in any case, they would have, it was the Constitutional Court compelled them to have it. So it was going to happen, whatever the case. So why delay the whole thing up to the last minute? It's just a few months to the voting, and then that's when you introduce the idea that diaspora should vote. Yet they could have done it a few years back. They could have done it to give it more time and see how to prepare the logistics. We have case studies. We have countries in East Africa whose members in diaspora vote. The Rwandans vote. Kenyans also participate in the elections, and they do it smoothly. So if we have time, we could really do some case studies. We could have studied how best way to conduct this in a fair manner, where Francis in ANT won't complain that the election was rigged, or NUP members who have like the largest community in diaspora would all have a chance to participate in this election. But so far, with that, the minimum time we have right now, a few months to voting, the primary is starting around September this year, so it's just a few months to when the election calendar is already been rolled in, and the voter register people are checking for their names, and new members are being registered. So that means, does that mean there's going to be an extension for the diaspora to register? Does that mean the diaspora process is going to be conducted differently? Like how Francis suggested that we have a separate EAC of sorts so that it can conduct a diaspora vote, because logistically it's also a challenge going from one country to the other. Even if they pick a few countries, at least they need to be some movement of sorts, as compared to moving from like one district to the other when you are in the country. So, Albert, your 5 cents on this. What do you think about us participating in the elections as we've been advocating for? I know it's a good thing, but how best can we do it given the short time we have?
Since Simon started it, I'll do it too. And you did call me a so-called elder, so I want to show my gray hair, my gray beard. So people can believe that I'm not just claiming to be an elder. I am an elder. Anyway, so I'll turn off my camera and answer your question.
We were told that you whiten your beard to look an elder, but you're still young.
No. I am an elder, and I don't claim this in the the Batoros, like the Mwendas who started claiming as the elders since they were born. No, I'm not one of those. I'm an actual elder. In your 50s, you are an elder. I was recently in Uganda. I participated in giving away a couple of my nieces, and I even was one of the people charged to ask how many cows. So I'm playing the elder's role. So I am an elder.
Okay, granted.
Thank you. So I appreciate Simon, and good morning, Francis. Good morning, Kharim. Good morning, Miriam. I appreciate Simon for the honesty in saying that he doesn't really know how this is going to work. And this ties in what both Francis and Kharim were saying. So my only request is, if you don't know, and you're the people in charge, you are the political party in power, if you don't know, then ask, because that's the best common sense. If you don't know something, you seek that information. And I cannot think of a better group of people to consult than the people living in the diaspora, the people who want the right to vote. But until recently, the effort has been lackadaisical, sometimes absent. The interactions that we've had for a long time, and I've been in the community, I've been a community leader, I've been in Ugandan organizations, I've interacted with several of the leaders from Uganda whenever they are here. The conversations have always been you people talking at us, you telling us, well, we think this is good for you, and never consulting with us. So I appreciate that. That's really refreshing to hear someone say, we don't know how this is going to work out. But I will say, don't throw your hands in the air. Ask us, we'll tell you. And I will start with a couple of things. As Miriam said, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are already African countries. If you don't want to follow the American example because you think somehow America spends a whole lot of money on diaspora voting, which they actually don't. They don't. But if that's the assumption, then let's not go with the American. Let's do the Kenyan model. Let's do the Rwandese model. There are several other ways that we could facilitate diaspora voting. And a correction, yes, the Constitution did not envisage us voting, but we have the Supreme Court. We have courts of laws, and the court did look at this issue and said, no, we do have the right. So that's the whole point. Where if there's a loophole or something in the Constitution that is unclear, the mandate of the courts is to interpret that and issue a judgment. And the judgment is as good as the Constitution. So if that was done, I think it should have been worked on. Yes, the government is dragging its feet because honestly, let's face it. The government has been in power for almost 40 years. A good number of the people who are in the diaspora are either economic or political refugees. So those are not really, the diaspora is really not a favorable constituency for the ruling party. So I can see the political motivation to drag their feet. And they're doing it. It's not like they don't know, because if they don't know, they can consult us. We can tell them how this can be easily done. Someone talked about the challenges that might arise in electronic voting. Well, you're doing a whole bunch of things electronic. Now you don't even Uganda doesn't issue visas on arrival at Entebbe. It's done electronically. So I can't imagine what would be a bigger danger for the country than issuing a visa and letting somebody in the country in electronically than a citizen voting. I think the other one would be you could let in a terrorist, you could let in somebody who doesn't wish the country well, you could let in all kinds of people. So if you're doing that process online and you think that is safer, clearly that shows us that you can also do a vote electronically. Something goes for the money that we send. Rarely do I ever send money. I mean, when I say rarely, it's not even the right word, because I think it has ever happened one time where I sent money to a number and that number was dead and then the money was lost. And it wasn't even a lot of money. But that's in all the years we've started doing electronic money transfers to Uganda. The money doesn't get lost. Why should the vote get lost? So we can have those people help us and we can learn from them what systems do they use, how to secure our vote. The only recommendation I would make in that is that the vote should not really be concentrated, and we should not concentrate our efforts on talking about the vote at the presidential level. I think the vote should be at the local level where we come from. If we're going to vote, we'll have to fulfill the requirements of voting, as the guidelines set out by the Electoral Commission, which will include an ID, voter registers, and all that. If you have an ID, it's going to show where your local constituency is in Uganda. If you were born in Mukono, that's where you vote. I was born in Fort Portal municipality, now Fort Portal Tourism City. That's where I will vote. So I don't know where the assumptions of these logistical hassles and that everyone is envisioning this to be so much of a really, really complicated exercise. I think we're complicating it. It's very simple. If I have an ID and it says I was born in Fort Portal Tourism City, that's where my voting is. So I am going to submit my vote electronically. Mr. Byamukama and the gang can have an IT team and they can send my vote to or count and add it to the numbers of the votes in Fort Portal. It's that simple. Not complicated. Okay? It's just an IT team to direct the votes of those people to where to the constituency listed on their ID. If I want to change and I say, you know what, I no longer now I have a house in Kampala, I no longer want to be considered a voter from Fort Portal. Now I want to be a voter from Wakiso. Then I make the effort, and I'm sure there's a process of how you change. But Ugandans move too. If you move from Kampala to Arua, don't you change your voter registration? So there has to be a process that I do. It's the same process for every Ugandan. So I think this is being complicated by trying to look at us as different and trying to make different rules for us. But really, we are not. We have places of birth in Uganda. Otherwise, we will not be Ugandan citizens. So those are the places, those are our voting consequences, not the embassy here in Washington, D.C., not the embassy in Qatar, not the embassy where. No, and by the way, that's exactly what the Americans do. There's no such a thing as a voting constituency or voting at the embassy in the American embassies. It never happens. A vote is sent from the local constituency here in the US to a voter who has requested it online. And it's mailed to them. They still might use mailing system. It's mailed to them, whether they're on a military base in Atlantic Ocean, or whether they are in London or whatever they are. The vote reaches them. They fill it out, and they mail it back to their place. There also is there's electronic voting for some people who are in sensitive places where mail is not delivered and had to do, and especially the military, they allow them to vote electronically. But they are voting again, not at the national level, not some embassy, not so. They're voting, and the vote is going directly to their local place of registration where they registered as a voter. So again, we are overthinking this, and I think it has caused this, and we're overthinking this. The technocrats are waiting for the government because they know that the government is really not ecstatic about diaspora voting. So they're dragging their feet as, oh, if the president hasn't really demanded it, or of course the president is not going to demand it. And his people are not going to demand it because they believe that the people in the diaspora are anti-NRM. But I think all this, what we're talking about, are excuses. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can just follow others who are doing this, and it's not even as expensive as people think. The only reason they think it's expensive, the only reason they think it's complicated, it's because they're not asking us, the people who are affected. I'll stop there, Miriam. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert, and thank you for the good advice. I would recommend the EC maybe to put them as the advisors, since they are stuck. You have good ideas which they can borrow from. But I think you're assuming too much. You're assuming that we have a digital process in place where everybody can participate in and vote, and the vote is monitored. If you say you can vote, say you are coming from Fort, and you can post your vote to your local parish, the voter location in Fort digitally. That means even everybody who is in Kampala, who is elsewhere, and doesn't want to go out to vote in their location, can also go on a computer and post their vote. So does that mean that they're gonna open the whole election process to accommodate digital voting, or do we even have capacity, and do they have like the IT capacity to monitor that process? So that's also another challenge at the technical level, because the way things are, we can't even compute the vote electronically. At least either they do it intentionally to frustrate the transparency. They could be frustrating the voter counting, digital voter counting, just so that they could have a chance to rig. Because we saw in the last election, private counting was happening, say at NBS. A television station was a television station was able to conduct voter counting nationally. How can the electoral commission, with its facilitation, fail to count the vote as it comes in? So all those are things to think about. But since we are not,
Yeah, let me respond to that quickly, Miriam, and very quickly. So again, these are challenges, and every country, everyone who has considered electronic voting and diaspora voting has considered them, and they've come up with solutions for them. Even here in the US, when we do, they call it early voting or mail-in voting. The reason they cut off early voting, electronic voting, and mail-in voting, the reason they cut it off early is so that those votes are already in the system. For example, the voters of Fort Portal Tourism City will not be voting on the same day as I am. I will vote early, a week early, and we're assuming that they will have competent people, and they should. These people are getting paid. Okay, we're assuming that they will sit and count the votes that have come from the US. They can't be that many. Okay, you can sort them here. Okay, the pile here, not the pile, because this is an electronic folder. The people from Fort Portal Tourism City are here. There are 15. These are the names of the people. If I'm on the register of Fort Portal, my name should not also appear in Fort Portal on that register. It should be crossed out as somebody who has already voted, because they have received my vote. And that's exactly what happens here in the US. When you send in your mail-in vote and you also go in the voting booth, they're going to tell you that you've already voted. Say, no, sir, you have mailed in your vote. They will not. And if you say, no, I did not, then they will give you what they call a provisional vote. They say, okay, vote here until we will investigate. But they're not going to let you vote twice. And it's okay if I happen to be in Kampala and they also say, you know what, I'm not going to Fort Portal, let me vote electronically. If the system is secure, it should accommodate everybody. But there are also limitations where you can say this system is only for people outside Uganda. It's very easy electronically to do it. Cut off and say, hey, only IPs from these locations are allowed to vote. It can't be rocket science. It can't be that complicated. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Albert. Yeah, it shouldn't be that complicated. Anybody, Karim, you want to say something before we close this topic?
Yes, I think what Albert is saying is okay, but it's not around as of now. We don't have it right now. This would have been the time of testing the system. There is no such a time, because according to the roadmap for the elections, they have cut off for the registers of people who are going to participate in the voting of youth, PWDs, and elders by January the 25th. That's when they are starting the college for that. And I don't know whether Honorable Simon can help us and let us know how this is conducted. Because with this youth and PWDs and persons with elder persons at the local level, the vote is people still standing behind someone. That's how it starts. They don't have a ballot for that. You stand behind somebody, then the elimination process stands at the local village, then it goes to the LC3, up to the districts, that's when, real nominations kick in. But at the grassroots, like at the local level, people still stand behind someone unless something has changed. Honorable Simon can guide us on that. But looking at the roadmap, it's right here with me. It doesn't look like there is time for the electoral commission to go back and do this. I think we can push this for next time, but as far as 2026, 2025, 2026 is concerned, I don't think we still have time to engage the diaspora and be part of the electoral process. Thank you.
Thank you, Kharim. Francis, you have something to say?
Thank you, Miriam, and other fellow panelists, and all the views they have exchanged. Like as I said, the idea is good, but it is poorly dressed, so it's not smart at all. Then Simon raised important issues, but I don't agree with him when he said that during the promulgation of the Constitution, they did not think about the diaspora voting. That's not true. When we look at the political objective, democratic principles, number one, it just states citizens of Uganda. Like when I come to the diaspora or when I go to the UAE, it does not state in our constitution that once you have gone in the diaspora or elsewhere, you cease to become a citizen of Uganda. And therefore, that same section says that I have to participate in all aspects of governance of my country. Not until for me I declare that I'm not a citizen of Uganda or of a given country. It is not the responsibility of a country to say, Francis, because now we don't either agree with you on this and this, or you have gone outside of the country, they don't even know the reason that took me outside of the country, then you are no longer a citizen or you can't participate. I have to participate fully. But something that I will have to say is that when we begin talking of, oh, there is no money in terms of logistics, remember the way how NRM operates. You are preparing them the moment they hear that, so that now they know this is a fertile ground for embezzlement, for corruption, and all sorts of things. But otherwise, I'm not saying it is simple like that. Right now, if you go on the polls of WhatsApp, Miriam, and if you have fully registered, let's say your name is there, the moment you cast a vote, you can't vote twice. As simple as WhatsApp, it stops you. It says you have already voted. So that's why I was saying, I still insist that there is nothing for us without us. Yes, right now it is too late, but if we are allowed as the diaspora, how can you ensure that this process is transparent, this process is efficient? We can still do it. Simon was talking about either if they put it at the embassy, heads of missions, and then Simon, don't worry about the distance, whether California and so on and so forth. I'm telling you, if you leave it to us, the people in the diaspora, we know what to do. Yes, well, the biggest number back home, they normally say everybody who is outside is a Kadama. No, some of the Ugandans who are here, most of them generally, there is no Ugandan that exited Uganda that is not educated. So the brains are there. So that's why you see countries like Rwanda and the rest, they tap into the diaspora community in as far as developing even systems is concerned. Last time I remember, Miriam, we hosted here, it was the Minister of Internal Affairs, and we were discussing the issue of passports and stuff like that. They just brought some people who were even smartly dressed going nowhere. They even didn't know what to do. They thought, a person, they were talking as if they were picked from I don't know where. So I still believe that not until government realizes the potential of the people that it has in the diaspora, in all aspects, then we will not progress. That's why you find Uganda will go and pacify Sudan. The only thing business we can go and do there is border. Others, you hear Kenya, they have a bank. You go to Dubai, you'll find other people like Kenya, whatever, they have real businesses that give the country a good image. For Uganda, because of the haphazard handling of things, the image is different. So I still argue that it's late for this election because they will use it to rig the votes, and then they say even the diaspora voted. No, we have to build a system from day one. When we are involved, we test it, not this kind of jumping on and then everything is haphazard. But otherwise, the diaspora voting is long due, but we have to have a systematic process that we are involved in and ensuring that it is even well organized. And we would manage it because we have seen systems, we have where to benchmark and compare and come up even with a better system than what other countries are using. That's what I would say. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. For clarification, the diaspora vote is in conjunction with the prisoners. So the court petition was for the people living outside the country and as well as the prisoners be allowed to vote as far as their constitutional right is concerned. So I think that the Electoral Commission and the government are really trying to rush this so that they are not held in contempt of the court, because the court ruling was saying that by 2025 these two groups of Ugandans should be allowed to vote. The challenge, as usual, is why wait until last minute? And it's not only the diaspora vote that is pushed into the last minute hustle, it's also the whole constitutional amendments which have not even been tabled into the parliament, which are supposed to be part of this voting. So if you have not even tabled amendments and the voter registers are already being rolled out, so how will these amendments even be part of these electoral processes? Honorable Simon Mulongo, if you can say something to this. Why do we for last minute things and then end up messing up the whole electoral process?
Well, as I said, I'm not an official of EC. I'm not on SEC. I'm not. So what I'm saying, as far as even if I'm NRM and I support NRM, I'm just speaking as an individual. So I may not answer to technical or administrative questions unless I would have been tipped and I consulted, and I was not. Yeah, I'm not saying the diaspora should not vote. I was just telling you the history and the reality of it. Indeed, there's no provision in the Constitution for it, except the law, the judgment that was made, and which now we have to use to operationalize and facilitate the diaspora voting. In Kenya, the 2010 Constitution under Article 82 provides for diaspora voting. And that of Rwanda, the same, they have a provision for it. They have a provision not just for diaspora voting, but also the electoral laws guarantee the right of each diaspora community to vote. So this is what I was just talking about. And I think it is it's very important that every Ugandan of age, wherever they are, whether in the prison, as our moderator has just said, and those outside the country should be given opportunity to vote, because it matters. It matters. You have to have a say on the democratic issues of your country. So that's okay. And then I thought that the elder Albert was a little oversimplifying the issues, because it definitely is not as simple, because some of those systems you are referring to are more external driven than the internal. And of course, but it's possible if we have earlier preparations. My concern, like was it Kharim and Francis raised the issue of preparations. We don't seem to have adequate preparations. Somebody mere making a statement that they want the diaspora to vote is not enough. We should see things in place because, as Francis did state, we are now at a point of starting primary campaigns. The roadmap is out of all the parties, more or less. I think most of the parties, especially the NRM, and for the National Electoral Commission, the it is the National Electoral Commission has also its roadmap already out. We're now doing the display of registers and so on. The registration of voters was done. People are now who have come of age, who registered and not have national IDs, are getting national IDs. This is the time when actually more or less we should be completing the exercise in diaspora. To know designated centers. For Kenya, it was mainly voting in person at the Kenyan embassies, high commissions, and consulates. And they had 12 countries that really had these consulates and all and commissions and embassies where people went to vote too. And actually they had over 10,000, about 10,000 plus that responded and voted, which is really an encouraging sign that if others can do it where they did, we can also do it. So I want to agree that yes, if others did it, we can also do it. And we don't have to go very far to benchmark. We're not talking of Europe, we're talking about just a neighborhood, and we can do it. So my concern, and like others, is why have they taken so long not to do this to ensure that there is civic education? Of course, most of the people, as you said, who are out there educated, that's the better bit of it. So even civic education can be even faster. But let's see it rolled out through the system here in Uganda and linked to the systems out there. Yeah, I shouldn't mind about traveling from California and Alaska and all this. It's okay. I was just making a comment. But I know that you may have capacity to do that. Once you're interested, of course, you'll make every effort to move to the polling point. Amending the constitution, I saw Francis flagging that. Of course, I'm sure with the time we should be able to amend, but the fact that we're armed with the decision of court, that's good enough as a starting point. But also eventually, I think we should be able to codify it and have it promulgated under the constitutional amendment. I think we can find out after this conversation. I'll go an extra step to find out how far they have gone, and maybe at the next time when we meet, if we're to meet soon, then I could be able to fill you in. And I wish Miriam, you had tipped me about this so that I would have had some answers from my colleagues on the executive, because this is fundamental. And also to invite one of them to be on this platform, either from EC or from Attorney General's chambers or something, to be able to fill in, because this platform is very important. It enables us to reach out, not just wait for the conventions, but to reach out to the majority of our colleagues who are out there and must know how they can exercise the right of voting. Now, of course, the young elder was saying that he may want the vote to be directed at his local area. Yes, those could be some of the options. We vote as diaspora and we state, I am from Monamisindo district, and I'm voting for Simon as my MP. I'm voting for Bakasara as my president. I'm voting for Miriam as my woman MP. Those kind of things can be done. Either you do it directly online to be able to register your vote, or you do it and post it, or whatever the arrangement. Those are various options we can, I think, adopt. But I'm afraid that if this kind of slowness that we seem to be seeing is maintained, then it can be a problem. But let's let them try. It's not just a point of appeasing court for fear of contempt, but they should do, because this is a reality, it's necessary. How can we have prisoners, inmates in our country, They are within this country, and you cannot take a polling station in the prisons, and people come and vote or have them registered. And a number of them, by the way, could be registered already, and could have voted in the previous elections. So it becomes very easy to say, now you're here, you designate prison centers, some point that is safe, and they vote. So I'm surprised that when somebody's in prison, we think that they are now cut off completely all their rights. And yet, really, it must not be the case. For example, we have rolled out education programs in prisons. People get degrees in prisons. They're able to sit for exams. So we can still do the same and have them vote. So to me, my view is, yes, I talk in support of colleagues, but I was just saying that definitely it is likely to be a little more complicated, but which is not insurmountable, because we have success cases, as you've already stated, in Rwanda and Kenya, who are just our immediate neighbors. If they could do it, we can also do it. And we should include all those areas of Middle East, because Kenya, for example, included some countries in Emirates that participants voted, people participated. So I think it is doable, but we just want to see it rolling out. Back to you.
Thank you, Simon. And that example of Kenya is really empowering. I think that the little information I have, I tried to reach out to EC officials and anybody, I think, due short notice. I wasn't able to get someone who was ready to come to the show, but I hope to get someone next time. And Honorable Simon, thank you for promising to reach out on our behalf. I hope by next show we'll have more information on that topic. But so far, I think they are suggesting that they roll out the voting in pilot places, like a few states which have a big number of Ugandans, and embassies which have capacity to do some good work. They mentioned the US, UK, and maybe UAE. It has the biggest number of Ugandans so far. Not as many as those of USA and Canada, but they have a considerable number of Ugandan citizens who are ready to vote. I hope something is done for us. I'm excited about the whole initiative, being able even to move a step, even though it's late. They say better late than never. So let's see how far we can go about it, and let's stay optimistic. And I want to, Simon and my colleagues in opposition, please. I think this is an opportunity to engage the country. They also have to hear from us, and I hope they send us like the candidates to communicate to us, and we also be able to exchange our views and what do we think about policy making in the country. Let's move on to the next topic, which is about Trump. He has rolled in his firing from all the cylinders. How are the Africans going to be affected by his new orders? He has suspended aid. He's tough on immigrants. He's tough on every other thing, including climate. Simon, I know you support Trump because of that. I'm going to you. I know Ugandans are excited about Trump because of the LGBTI. The homophobia in Uganda is one of the biggest reasons they support Trump, but it's not the only reason. The Honorable Speaker of Parliament was very excited when Trump was elected because she hoped that her sanctions would be lifted. She was sanctioned for money laundering, corruption, and human rights abuse, among other things. So, what do you think, Simon? We start with you.
Okay. Well, I have sympathy. I used to be really a very good supporter of the Democrats, but some of the exceeded liberties hurt me in a way, not just to mention LGBTQ plus, but a number of other things. And I thought I would sort of change course. And I'm not a voter in the US, so my feelings may not necessarily count. It's just merely sentimental. But to me, my excitement of Trump is not really excitement, because the American foreign policy are grounded on a number of institutional order, the interests of the country. So the change is not that significant. Usually, whether it's change of Democrats or now they are Republicans and so on. Most times for us who are outside here, the change is very minimal. And I don't want people to be very excited thinking that the sanctions can be lifted, because it is not as simple. It's not as simple, especially when the state has taken its position on some matters. So it may not be as simple. It cannot be automatic. I can tell you that. And it's not as simple. I've seen a number of people coming in and chewing some people's money, meeting the powers that be, and so on and so on. That and then of course promising to engage the Capitol Hill and all this. But I'm not sure whether this will work, because it is not very simple to change such positions. But the only good thing for me in terms of AHA is that it's not going to be a priority issue for the country to relate with other countries. It won't. We think it shouldn't. But the rest, I just leave it to them. I also have fears. Because President Trump sometimes is unpredictable, but also becoming a rightist extremist who wants to look at America first in a manner that is rather untraditional. And in so doing, he's likely to make, like he has started. The first issue was to focus on reducing foreign aid, which is going to impact a number of programs, not only in Uganda, but also other countries. And I remember the mention of Israel and Egypt, which will be impacted quite negatively, except for security. My earlier prediction was that anything to do with the trade, particularly in extractive industries, issues of security of the movement of goods in the Red Sea and the Gulf, I thought that will enable him be attracted, and also to be interested in the business of extractive industries in Africa. I thought that was my prediction, that it would be so, and which is likely to be. But as long as he's not supporting multilateral agencies, like now they're pulled out in the World Health Organization, which he left, was about to act, and now he has cracked the whip, and he may not want to listen to things like IGAD or ESC or AU. It's not of his interest, and that definitely will have a problem, because some of these institutions in Africa, including ESC, including IGAD and so on, have a lot of support from outside, and that's how they've been able to run affairs. This means that joint planning and operations for countering, for example, terrorism, is going to be impacted negatively. It means that there is the opportunity for these asymmetrical groups to thrive and to even expand the more. And so the security in our countries and so on are likely to suffer setback. The issue of health, if he reduces the support to World Health Organization or even removes it altogether, and yet they're also funding health programs, if he reduces or even removes, withdraws altogether, Africa's capacity to be able to maneuver and fight the pandemics is going to be seriously impacted, and this is not going to be good at all. And we also who believe in the freedom for people to move, like some of you who are out there, we think we should be able to move in and move out as you wish and as you want. But if it's going to crack his whip and limit all these chances, including a number of our colleagues returning, because last time actually we had I think as high a number as 15,000 were deported, and this can be serious. If we have all these African immigrants, most of them deported, yeah. Because I was told that, for example, Nigerian immigrants who are very many in the US and quite well educated there, 61% of them hold at least some qualifications of the first degree and above, and so on. So it is for a ton. The issue of employment, the issue of contributing back home. You people send a lot of money back home here, and as such, we're going to suffer because resources from you as a community coming back to our country is going to be a big threat. And not to mention the issue of the birthright citizenship threat, which people know better, and so on. We're not comfortable with it at all. The issue of trade and energy, I just see Trump has criticized a number of trade agreements like AGOA and so on. And we see that, of course, remember, Africans did a huge contribution in terms of returns to trade through AGOA. I think it was something close to 40 billion about 1 year ago or 2 years ago. And if we maintain 40 billion coming into Africa, that's a big sum of money. And that will impact on not only just the inflows, but also the system that support this trade, who include the employment, people who are employed, those who are active in running machinery for making textiles, for example, that are exported. All these are going to be impacted. And so it is quite a big threat. The other one would be America's influence will definitely go down. And the Eastern Bloc, particularly led by China, is going to shine much more because China is trying to maximize its presence on the continent. And so far, they have huge numbers of trade, and they're dominating at about 254 billion about a year ago or so, in terms of the resources that they have been able to inject in. And this means that the US, which has actually started lagging behind in renewable energy investments in Africa, are likely to actually dwindle much more. Now, we don't mind, of course, in terms of multipolar, that we have not just one power playing around, but also we fear, because yes, even the Chinese may look so innocent now, but you cannot be sure they're going to be innocent as we go by, and when they dominate much more. They may come up with the imperialistic tendencies. There's no doubt about it. They may look nice because they're looking at a competitor. But once the other competitor lowers its guards, then definitely we're likely to suffer the similar consequences that we do. So, and then I also see the broader geopolitical and security implications. Things like, I want to tell you that Trump will not slow down sanctions. He's likely to even enhance sanctions to some countries because of political human rights issues, which could deepen economic challenges and isolation. Military engagement, the administration has had some disengagement from multilateral security initiatives, which would weaken our defense against transnational threats. So I see that also being an issue, and so on. And I see the migration and refugee issues stepping up, because if the US, its policy on refugee admissions plummets under Trump much more, it means that African refugees, who make up over 22% of the total in the last few years, would actually worsen the condition for these refugees fleeing the conflict zones. So I have quite that's why I'm saying I'm not just excited, but I also see a lot of challenges coming up. Maybe those challenges will teach us a lesson to up our act, because as somebody mentioned, we have issues of corruption, we have issues of misdirecting of resources, issues of redirecting our priorities. Maybe the suffering a bit will make us come to our senses in a way. And if President Trump does not put a price on human rights in some of these countries, and he will not do so much because he's not giving aid to them. If he's not giving much aid to them, even the attention to human rights violations may not be as a serious interest to his side as you might guess. So I have okay, one can be excited here and there, but also have a lot of misgivings in terms of governance, geopolitics, and security, and which Uganda is definitely part and parcel of it. Back to you, Madam Kyomugasho.
Thank you, Simon. Very interesting views there. I think that Trump will give a thought about Africans' governance. I doubt, but it's good that you raised all those points, especially on the geopolitical security. That is going to be a challenge if they withdraw their monitoring. And among the executive orders he gave, we know there is that so-called Muslim ban, which might be create a backlash, and we might see increased terrorism, which affects Africa largely because when they fail to hit anybody in USA continent, they hit their installations in Africa. So if the security funding, if the military funding is reduced in that area, I think that's some cause for worry for most Africans. Albert, you are in the middle of things. As how is Washington? How is the new government feeling like? I know when the weather was so bad during the inauguration, people were like, God is sending a message to the Republicans that climate matters. We have seen snow in Florida, which and areas like New Orleans, which have never had snow in the last century. We are enduring a lot of climate change, the fires and everything. But Trump is cutting the funding to the climate fund in the Paris agreement. We know they don't believe that climate change exists. They don't believe global warming. They think that it's just fantasy. It's fake news. Use his own words. And what do you think? What is your view?
Well, thank you, Mayor. How is Washington D.C.? It's still cold. So if you think that was the message, then we can consider it ongoing because it's still cold. But joking aside, I want to agree, and maybe let me take a step back and ask. And when you give Simon a chance again, I would like to know more. You introduced him as honorable, but didn't tell us. You said he's a member of the NRM and an official, but we didn't get a chance. And I'm asking that in a good way because we have had NRM cadres and officials and people on this forum. I don't think I've ever had somebody articulate the challenges, at least on this issue, and the dynamics of American geopolitical dynamics and Uganda's positioning and what might. I've never had somebody articulate it in such a way. I completely agree with everything. Actually, he gave everything that I would have given. The excitement of our leaders, in our motherland, talking about how Trump, and they've said this before on this very forum, that trust, that faith is kind of misplaced because every American president serves the American people, not Ugandan people. We need, as Africans, to learn. We need to learn how African leaders have to learn how to advocate for their people, how to position for their people. So yes, there's one of the executive orders suspended funding for USAID for 90 days. That's 3 months. So for programs like PAFA in Uganda and the others and all, I think the US government was sending about almost $600 million spending on health there. So that's a lot of money. So clearly, some Ugandans are going to be affected. Was the government prepared for this? I don't think so. But as we were talking about with the elections, they should be. They should be. People are paid for this kind of these kind of jobs to analyze global situations, to look at global geopolitics, to advise the president. So yeah, so that's why I'm even asking, what is Simon's capacity and where is he working? If he's not anywhere near the Seven's administration, maybe they should promote him and have him give him a seat in State House. Because those are the kind of things African leaders need to hear. This idea of getting excited over one issue, America doesn't operate that way. For some of us who have lived here for long, and others who even worked for the government and know the ins and outs of the government, it doesn't work that way. Okay, so the speaker getting excited about my sanctions are going to, sanctions were about LGBT. Well, I think last time I did say, and I'm going to repeat it again, she should actually consider who is going to be enforcing some of those sanctions that they put on her. I think it's an openly gay man from California who is Trump's nominee to be the Secretary of Treasury, because most of those were money laundering and they're enforced by the Treasury Department. So if she's that excited, it might be short-lived. So yeah. And then on the other ones, obviously our role as civil servants, we implement the president's policy. We have a new president. He's going to give us our marching orders and we will follow them. We do not participate in open partisan politics as civil servants. This is not like Uganda. So we work for the American people, and the leader of the executive is Donald J. Trump. The honorable one will serve for 4 years, and then he will leave, and another will come. But as Simon said, the interests that are going to be served are going to be American interests. They're not going to be Ugandan interests. They're not going to be Kenyan interests. So our motherland, the leaders in those places have to wake up and start advocating and advancing the interests of their people. It won't be an American president doing it. On trade with AGOA, I've really had a chance to look at AGOA from when it was put in place. We mismanaged AGOA. I think it was ran as some, I don't even want to spend much time of it. But even before AGOA was completely undone, Uganda was not really taking full advantage of AGOA. Countries that have taken full advantage of AGOA who might not actually be impacted, the Nigerians, the Ghanas, and the others who have actually done so much with AGOA than we ever did. So those, and because they did that, they have now a constituency that I will advocate for them. Simon, I want to let you know that don't so much look at American politics in the lens of Ugandan politics. Here, yes, the executive, America has the president has a lot of executive powers they can use, but the systems do work. Systems do work. I think if you were following yesterday, you saw 3 Republicans join 47 in the Senate to try and block the confirmation of the Secretary of Defense. So it would only have taken one other senator, and that nomination would have gone down. And then Trump would have to nominate another person to serve in that role. He wanted somebody to lead the Justice Department, a former congressman from Florida. They let him know that he would not be confirmed. So systems are going to work. And if you look at the elections, the Honorable J. Trump got 49% of the vote. Kamala Harris got about 47%. So American population is still divided. So this is not one of for Ugandans to look and say, oh my God, now the Republicans are in charge. And we will have an election in 2 years. So who knows who will control Congress then? Okay, so the checks and balances are there, and some of the executive orders that the president has put out will meet some challenges. One, I think, has already been struck down in the court in Florida. So it's a little different than how Uganda works. I don't think Museveni can issue an order and some judge in Karamoja says, I disagree with that, and the whole country obeys. So the US is a different animal. Because I think some judge, I think was in Seattle, Washington, said no to the executive order of stripping citizenship from kids who are born here with people who are not documented. Because the Constitution clearly says every person born in the US is a US citizen. And that has been in place for over 150 years. So yeah, the systems will work, but I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the contributions of Simon, and it's really refreshing to hear somebody who has that kind of perspective. And I'm actually encouraged if that person is near government and even talking to these policymakers, maybe they will wake up. They'll wake up and not think, hey, we're doing these people a favor. First of all, it's in the interest of Uganda. For example, we started off with talking about voting. It's in the interest of Uganda to establish a common bond between us and our kids. Because the money that you're talking about, I send money to Uganda because I have attachments to Uganda. I'm still contributing to funerals and weddings and school fees. You're going to have a hard time convincing my son to pay school fees for some cousin, to pay for a wedding of some uncle. It's not going to happen. So if you do not feel like we have a stake in the country, and we show that stake to our kids, then you better be preparing for those for a substitute of the millions and millions of remittances that we're sending. Because I guarantee you, as you can see, the dynamics of the world are changing. Everyone is looking inward. There will not be a huge concentration of Ugandans in the US in 10, 15 years from now. Our kids will not have, if our kids have no link to Uganda, they will not identify as Ugandans, and they will not send remittances to Uganda. And there will not be a new group of kids coming from Uganda entering the US if the current policies continue. And they will continue for a while. Okay. I can see that this nativism, these nationalistic tendencies that the new administration is going to bring in, they will take hold and they will stay for at least 10, 15, 20 years. So either Uganda learns how to embrace us, and then by extension, we bestow that ownership feeling to our kids and keep that connection, or there will be a breakage of that link, and then the country will suffer because remittances are a lot of money and everyone knows it. It's just that they're not going to continue forever, especially if you do not grease the wheels that bring them in. And we are that wheel. So yeah, so I thank Simon, and when he gets a chance, please give us more and tell us what some of the things you're working on, where you are especially, and maybe we could start advocating for you to get somewhere near the powers that be. Thank you.
Wow.
Albert, Simon is a rare breed and he's very, very well informed. He's also a security expert, so that's why he was able to articulate role of US in security. Is a security research and consultant, but he's NRM, a former member of parliament. He can talk more about himself, but he's still much of an insider. And yes, we recommend you be given better roles because there are very few people who really think like you, have that open mind, have that capacity and inception about the global affairs like you. Kharim, the previous Trump regime, he was looking at the big players in Africa, the big economies, South Africa, Egypt, Nigeria, and what was the last one? I think even Kenya somehow featured somewhere. So for him, it was trade instead of aid, and Africa has been advocating for that, but it's the way he brings it. Like, is he? If we are able to roll in and be allowed to trade without so many tariffs, roll it gradually so that we also think of substituting the funding, the aid that is going to be cut, with our local funding. That would be a better option for Africa because we all know the foreign aid has never benefited Africa since independence, and we actually waste a lot of money in capital flight compared to the aid that we get from the West. So how is Africa ready to really how are they prepared to work with the Trump regime as far as foreign funding is concerned, and any other views about the new era? I mean, the new government.
Yes, hello. Hey, hi everyone.
Yeah.
Um, I will start with Uganda, with the excitement. Like everyone else has said, it was far-fetched. I think the excitement was too much, and it was misguided on matters of principle. I'll give an example. About a week ago, there were a couple of people who moved from here and went to Uganda masquerading as a delegation from the White House, meeting Museveni and promising him how they are going to be in the close ear of the new president to say that he reconsiders the sanctions. I think we are going to see a lot of those masqueraders, since the trends of the US and Africa policy are changing, given what has happened. Now, for the past 4 years, I think America has been concentrated on three things on the African continent. One is defense, democracy, and development, 3D. The challenge with those is America always expects that they will throw money to an African government, and then the people, those leaders, will figure out how to handle those issues. And that's why we always say that foreign aid hasn't helped, is because the assumption is when we get this aid, we will put it to use. Unfortunately, it goes into the pockets of the few, and that money goes away, which is not the case with China. China will not throw money, will come directly and invest in a project and make sure they have boots on the ground to monitor that money, and make sure that the projects follow through. Now, in the coming in this presidential term that we see, a lot of changes have come, and I'm more worried about countries that have been benefiting from programs like USAID. I'll give an example from the International Aid Transparency Initiative. Estimated about 29 million that have been going into Uganda for malaria, about 160 million US dollars for PEPFAR through HIV commodities and HIV labs. Then there are these organizations that have been partnering with USAID to run the healthcare programs in Eastern Uganda. The programs have been taking about 25 million, in Kigezi and Lango about 40, in the East Central about 25, Ankole and Acholi 52 million. So when that money is cut, not only the jobs of the people who have been providing those health services are going to go, but also you have to think about the direct beneficiary of someone who has been receiving, antiretroviral drugs. You would think about someone who has been receiving treatment for malaria. There's a lot of bodies online, so it might be like a second wave of, I'm not trying to threaten people, but it might end up as a second wave of COVID. And you should also worry, what plans do our governments have in case of health emergencies, in case an outbreak comes up, in case we run into cholera or Ebola, things of the sort. How are we prepared as African countries? Because most of the times we talk about, oh, our sovereignty, but this is the time that African countries should now start thinking outside the box. How can we be able to work independently to solve our problems? How can we maximize the resources that we have to do a positive impact to our people? How can we fight things like corruption? Because there is a lot of money that is lost within the hierarchy of government. The other thing that we should also look at is China. The US might think they are threatening running away from Africa, but Africa is going to become a global hotspot mineral resources, for academic excellence. We have the youngest population by far. So any country that is ready to partner with us, African countries are ready to move, and when you look at things, when you look at countries like China, China has fully invested, is ready to work with Africans, and not just throwing money at them, but also doing real projects. If you followed the China Africa summit and saw the concessions that China had given, I would give a small rundown. It is promising a program like AGOA, where African countries can export commodities to China tariff free. China is promising about 50 billion US dollars to African countries for infrastructure development within the next 5 years. It is also promising about 100 billion. It's also promising to finance some of the debts that these African countries have been into. So while also America is trying to do this to Africa, they shouldn't forget that there is BRICS. BRICS is taking shape, and these countries are really looking at partners and working together. The sanctions that had been given to Russia didn't work because they were partners to work with. So when you look at the things like BRICS, the American people should also be worried. They might end up thinking that they are kicking us out, but they are boxing themselves in. So they are going to self-isolate from the rest of the world, and other countries will be moving on and taking opportunities where necessary. So it is right now incumbent to our African leaders to do some kind of soul searching. Where do we go when Big Daddy is not offering money? How can we maximize the little resources that we have to do maximum impact on the ground? How can we start seeking new partners in development that are committed on funding these critical programs that need money? How can we utilize things like AI to maximize service delivery on the ground? So that's what I was thinking about. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Francis. And it's good you raised the issue that America might think that it's kicking out the poor developing countries, but it could be losing out on the opportunities. But this becomes an opportunity for Africa if we are ready. Are we ready to tap into that opportunities? The problem is our governance. If you look at East Africa today, we have Sudan is falling apart. South Sudan, there is nothing to talk about it. DRC is trying, but not too much up there yet. We have Kenya is also not doing as well as it should be. So it's that rate. The governance in Africa, are we at that level where we are ready to rethink the whole development agenda, where we are ready to substitute trade for foreign aid, where we are able to tap into our resources, fund the gaps that are going to be left out by the US funding, especially given our corruption. And Simon, I don't know if you can give us an insight into that, but let's first listen to Francis. Francis, what do you think? What do you think about the new Trump?
Thank you, Miriam. I will not differ from what the rest of the panelists have said. They have said quite significant, important things. I will say that it will depend on how we look at it. Like as how I said, it can be a misfortune, it can be a fortune, depending on how we handle it. So where chance prevails, it always favors a prepared mind. But I will also begin with the excitement, most especially from our leaders, like being excited about Trump coming into power. I look at them like young monkeys which were seeing a forest being burnt, and they were excited about the light and how they were able, the sky had become bright, but little knowing that their homestead was being demolished. So I think in Africa we normally have this politics of politics of selfishness is where the problem is. That right now, instead of you remember we had this conversation during the past elections of US, and saying that we would be, as Africans, thinking strategically than being excited and having dubious deals, like what Karim was saying, a team going to talk to the president and say we can do ABCD. That's how even they end up being defrauded, like a whole country to be defrauded, and you hear Bank of Uganda is under wire fraud and stuff like that. That's where all comes from, like lack of understanding either how international politics works and so on, which I believe we have experts in Uganda, like people like Simon, but I don't know whether they do take advantage of them and knowing exactly what we need to do. But I still believe that that excitement. Yesterday, I received an email on some project that we are working on, but the department that sponsors us, which is part of government here, are saying that, okay, following the directive of the president, such and such projects have been put on hold, or they can be suspended. And like how other members have said, part of that money even goes to Uganda and so on. But then, if this is a misfortune, then how would we turn it into a fortune? But instead of us thinking of, okay, now how do we strategize ourselves? Then we have learned nothing and have forgotten nothing. I'll give you an example. Uganda the parliament has just passed a supplementary budget of over 200 billion, for example, for State House. Then so much billions for ROA, that project that has been there forever and ever. So you see, instead of saying, okay, now how do we strategize and think in a different way, given the challenges that we are heading, or some aid has been cut off, you see the type of extravagance. The only thing they are thinking about is to go and tax agreements. And you ask yourself, how many agreements happen in Uganda that will bridge the gap? Bakasara talked about remittances. Yeah, like approximately 1.5 billion US dollars were remitted from here back to Uganda, approximately that. So those are some of the things that they would be thinking about and strategically saying, okay, how is this policy or order going to affect our people, and how do we also as a country come in our foreign policies to align them that we do have some muscle or some say at some point. So we have to think twice about some of these things, or to follow international politics in its depth and in its depth and broad as much as we can, because in one way or another it affects us. Yes, Karim talked about that America is losing on opportunities, which Africa being a hotspot for minerals, younger population, and so on. I do agree with Karim, but the challenge that I have is that all these countries, whether it is the US, whether it is China, and so on, they take advantage of us. Generally, it is not like an opportunity, but they take advantage of us. They have understood our weakness and so on and challenge, most especially that it rests in our leadership. I'll give you a vivid example. You are seeing what Chinese were doing in Rwanda. in which country can you do that? But okay, if there is sand is a certain mineral, whatever research would be doing, the scientists would be even advising. Then we would say, okay, Chinese, you are not packing the sand and taking it to your country. Instead, bring the industry that is whatever you are processing from the sand, put it here. But you see, they were just doing whatever. But even I don't think that even when they were arrested or stopped, that would take effect. You find again, either somebody in the government is benefiting. You have heard of the gold in Uganda, the way how everything is messed up. Even at a big advantage to say, no, we can manage ourselves, we can have things move. But everything is haphazard, and then you try to ask yourself, what are we up to? I have always advocated that not until Africans will learn to trade amongst ourselves, African countries, most especially infrastructure development, that I can, like as how here you see a truck can take goods from, let's say, the east coast to the west coast. Similarly, trucks should be able to move from, if there is proper infrastructure, from Uganda or from Cairo all the way to Cape Town, and throughout to even different, either from the east to the west of Africa and so on. And then you find that I can be able on a Sunday not to come and sell certain goods through AGOA to the US, but I can take them, maybe they're on the band in West Africa or South Africa and vice versa. And then we also ensure that we also have our own standards, because that's how these people take advantage of us, that then they begin, oh, this is not up to standard. Which standard? Then we should also be asking, what is that standardization of African systems? But all in all, I would say that as African leaders, they should get concerned of some of these executive orders, and some of them, by the way, even when they are passed and you think it will be for short notice, like as how Bakasara has said that it will be, other people will resist them, but the impact they will have had in that short period is longer lasting for some of our people. Like we have said, the PEPFAR, once it is halted, our people who have HIV and HIV will surge. But now you would ask ourselves, what happened to all the money that was sunk into research during COVID, that they are inventing different things and so on and so forth. So it is important that we think about all these things. Although I'm sure quality chemicals, I think, is manufacturing some ARVs, but we should be moving faster in such innovations to also start becoming independent on some of the things. But otherwise, yes, this will be, and nobody should say, oh, it is just 4 years and then he will go, another government will come. No, that's how it is here. Policies are cumulative. They don't say that after 4 years, then no. The foreign policy are almost cumulative, and indeed they bite. And the bad thing with our countries, because we are not economically stable and even in other different aspects, then it comes, even in the shortest time possible, it makes a huge impact. Look at the sanctions, how our budgets, when UK came in and they had also their own issues with us and so on and so forth. But see what has been happening. And because people in government or our leaders, they don't feel the impact of some of these sanctions. Why? Because I have given an example. Even when people are suffering at a local level, no medicine in hospitals, the education system is in tatters and so on, and infrastructure is not up to date. But a classified budget was passed for State House. So do you think people who are in his circle will just know that there are sanctions? Because the state for them remains important. It is the common person who feels all these the repercussions and impacts of such. So I think we need, as a country, to always plan strategically, not because of these elections, but we as a country, where are we going? We should be having a plan that can stand the test of time, like as how these developed countries do, and then systems that work, that change at will, like as how the NRM does things, like everything rotates around. Museveni, and I don't know what will happen when he's not there, because he has become the state and the state is himself. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. And like you said, like also Karim said, can we turn this mess into an opportunity to be economically independent and self-sustaining, especially as far as our health sector is concerned? I hope someone, will wake up, but how will people who take ARVs, they are free currently, even if they're manufactured in Uganda, I'm sure that that guy is paid by donor money. So when that funding is cut, is the government ready to step in and cover that as financing, or they're gonna be pushing the cost on the patients? So some of those are the issues, and I hope our parliamentarians, our policymakers are already looking into that. If not, it's almost too late, and the people will be affected because they don't stop getting sick. That should be an ongoing. So if you are on a tap and someone suddenly stops that tap, what happens to those patients? Simon, as we conclude, please briefly, we can look back at the first topic we covered. Albert Bakasara said that in order to get remittances from us, they also need to invest in us, and they also have to make us part of decision making in Kampala by voting, by consulting us on policy making, by encouraging us also socially to be part of the community, thereby creating relationships in between. So far, the diaspora, the remittances from the diaspora to the economy cover the 3% GDP. And the Ministry of Finance is saying that they are looking at making it 10% of that GDP. And with proper investment into the area, I'm sure it should be able to rise to that. But are we ready? Or are we also investing where our mouth is, or it's just empty talk? So in conclusion, Simon, please tell us what's the way forward for Uganda given the Trump challenges and the diaspora vote, if you can.
Yes, I think some of the ideas from our colleagues, from Francis and also from who is that, Haji? Is he there? Kharim, yes. They raised some ideas within their discussions. And I think that we as a country, first and foremost, we need to give much more space and accord attention to our colleagues in diaspora, because they give us free direct foreign forex inflows to the country. And this is something that we sweat to get by other means. And if we have them, the more we have them, particularly those who are employed in better income activities, even those who have low level jobs, they do carry money home as it comes in, as you said, that contributes to quite a percentage to our GDP. So we need to really give it attention. I know State House has created a desk for diaspora and so on, but I think it shouldn't just be a desk. I think we should be able to institutionalize much more than that. We should elevate it to perhaps a directorate in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that really looks at the issues of engaging in the diaspora, and also perhaps even encouraging people to look for opportunities, professionals, in a manner that is constructive. Because if we have no better experts to give, and we have excess brains that we can actually have exported out there, we should be able to do that and engage government to have some expertise. I remember some job service groups in the UK and somewhere else, I think Canada, we're looking for those who have skills in nursing and all that. But to me, it should have been really a government initiative to have people to export for purposes of skills, and it would even enhance the inflows from the diaspora. And that goes without saying that their participation in governance matters. If the parliament is conducting its business at committee level, they should be able to have moments when they engage our Ugandans in diaspora to be able to also contribute to some legislative activities in parliament, whether budget, whether it is about policy, and so on and so forth. So I think we need to do that. And somebody did suggest that, yes, we could amend the constitution. Let's amend the constitution so that it's elaborate. The constitution, and let's have specific legislation that looks at diaspora, so that the rights, the obligations that go with it, and so on, is well structured within the legal framework. Coming to President Trump, yes, it is a wake-up call that dependency should not be seen to be permanent. We should be able to look at alternative ways of survival, if not developing internal capabilities, so that we're able to cushion ourselves against such shocks. Because if we have been depending on the West for medical and other services, how much have we done in savings to be able to stand on our own once it comes to an end? Because a very serious institution like a ministry of planning and also respective program ministry, they should know that whatever support we get from outside or from elsewhere cannot be permanent. So we should be having alternative mechanisms to be able to prepare for ourselves. In accounting, there is a cost called depreciation. Depreciation means the wear down of an asset. You set aside money so that by the time it is rated zero for the next, say, 5-10 years, you have enough savings to be able to replace such an asset. Do we have the same means in programmatic activities in this country? Do we or don't we have? So if we don't, then it's better, it's the right time for us to have done it. Because I don't think they do have. So I think the Trump administration is going to awaken communities like Africa, like Uganda particularly, to really rethink about over-dependency on external assistance. As the Baganda say, that, and even in my culture, that a stick in the neighbor's house cannot help you to kill a snake in the doorway. If a snake has come to your doorway, you have no chance even to jump out and pick the stick from the neighbor. You need to use something within your house to kill. So we should really, it's a wake-up call that we rethink on dependency and in terms of overly dependence on external assistance. But having said that, it being sudden is a challenge, because we never anticipated the cuts. We never anticipated this, so that we would factor them in our plans in terms of budgeting and so on and so forth. If we are to inject money in IGAD or inject money in ESC in the security sector, then we should have done it so that we know from such a period it is going to cut. But just sudden cutting is so disruptive that you definitely were likely to have to suffer some shocks. But anyway, having said that, we have to manage our country. There are 3 objectives for any state. One is survival. We have to make sure that our country is surviving by taking radical measures as necessary and as possible. And second objective is growth. We must also fight to ensure that we grow irrespective of such an environment. And finally, the third objective of such a country or a state is being competitive. We should make sure that we not only survive, we not only grow, but we're also competitive in the region and also globally. So we have really to think hard, and this is where we need to employ brains. You see, we may be wanting people who support us. That factor number 1 for employment is loyalty. Perfect, but also unless such a factor is grounded in competencies, that you give somebody to run a ministry who is very competent, who will think ahead, who can envision, who can be able to have a prognosis, looking ahead and anticipate challenges and be able to put in place absorption capacity so that the country doesn't suffer a lot of setbacks. So to me, that is really adios for now. And thank you so much. And Albert, thank you. Webale chali nye ndiga wambale wa Bugisu. Baiti ogambo rutoro riche I can try something. But thank you for your kind words. I have a business background in the long past. I did accounting and business administration. I studied actually in Louisiana for my MBA, and I also did. I've been very active in the security sector. I've done a lot of studies in defense and security. I'm a graduate of War College, and I've been in government. I've done security services activities. I have also worked with the regional agencies like the Eastern Africa Standby Force. I was the founder, and until recently, when I returned, I was a diplomat in Somalia, where I was representing the African Union. So now, as Miriam said, I am doing my personal things, consultancies. Just in case, of course, I can't just sit there and wait one time to be placed in some position, but that's what is it. So I've worked in a president's office, I've worked in a security sector for very many years, and so on. But here we are. But thank you so much for your kind words. And I wish, Miriam, you'll have to give me the number, the contact of Albert, so that we can exchange some views just in case we can work together here and there. And of course, for the colleagues who are here, consultancies are good. We can work together. I've had some brush shoulders with Miriam and her group to do some kind of exchange of ideas. So you're welcome to work together, and we see how we can make a difference. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Miriam.
Thank you, Simon, and we really hope that NRM can use some of your brains, because right now that's what they lack most, especially in strategic thinking and planning for the future of the country. Thank you so much for your views. And Albert, in conclusion, what do you think about Trump? And then
thank you, and you're welcome, Simon. Now, clearly, we should exchange some numbers and talk more. On the security horizon, of course, you are an expert in these things, but I think Somalia and maybe Djibouti will be on top of what will affect Uganda directly. I think in the first Trump administration, there was an effort in the military circles to have an African command headquartered in Djibouti, and I don't want to say who was the leader in opposing it. so yeah, you might align on the issue of homosexuality, but then you will clash on the issue of the African command. So we should not really, again, everyone has said it, we really should encourage African leaders to start looking and advocating for African interest instead of sitting and waiting. I kind of disagree with Simon in saying that this is a shock, we're not prepared. I have not seen, you can blame Honorable Trump for everything and anything under the sun, but one thing I have to commend him and want to say is he has not done anything that he didn't say he will do. Nothing. There is nothing in what he has done in the first 3 days of his administration that he did not telegraph. So the fact that our leaders there did not listen, policymakers did not take him seriously, that's on them. That's not on him. And then Simon gave a lot of advice to the government, and I hope they do listen. I want to end by giving address to our community here. And Simon, like you, I've studied here. Actually, all my education has been in the US. I'm also an MBA from Webster in Missouri. But so the advice I would give, and I've been a community leader here. I was the chair of Toro American Association. I appreciate your Toro, and I'm very, very encouraged. I've been an active member, encouraging our community to keep the culture and everything. I was impressed that the cultural leader of Bakasara was at the inauguration. I think he might actually be the highest ranking Ugandan official to be there. And that gives me a chance to say that we're not just money generators for Uganda. We can also be a very big advocacy group. Okay, you look at when the executive order came in for suspending aid, what two countries were exempted? Egypt and Israel. Why do you think that is? Israel has the biggest lobby of any country here in the US. Okay, how long did it take to end the Israeli-Gaza war? So was the aid cut off? Was the weapons cut off? No, because they have a big lobbying effort here. So we could be that. If our country can tap into our connections, we could be that. So for our group here, for our community here, I think this should not be, say, oh, we had Trump, we're not going to do this. This should be somehow an encouragement for us to tune in into our community, because for most communities that I've visited, and I've said this before, everyone talks about Uganda as home, even the majority of people who will never go back. Even for the majority of us who are raising families here, we consider the US as just, a temporary place. And yet it is actually our permanent home. We're disengaged from the politics. They call a community meeting, you will never find 2 or 3 or beyond 2 or 3, 4 Africans. The hall is full. But then you look in the classrooms, half of the students are African descent. But we're not there. They call a community meeting we're going to do a chemical plant here. We're going to do these things. We don't go. We don't vote because we think ourselves as Ugandan. So I think we can be both. We can participate both in our motherland politics, but also in our adopted homeland politics. And by politics, I mean with a small p. Go to your neighborhood parent-teachers conferences, participate, vote. Raise up your voices. It's not enough to say, oh, I don't like Trump or I don't like Biden. And it's not enough to say that. Engage, educate yourself about the issues. You have no idea. I've been looking at our community forums. You have no idea the misinformation that is there. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Why are you quoting an executive order? It's right there on whitehouse.gov. Go read it yourself. Most of them are not even one page. Most of them are actually one paragraph. So you can't read that one paragraph and you're going to be dependent on third and second and fourth hand information. So we need to get out of that as a community. And I'm talking to the community here we are here now. We're raising families here. Our destiny is intertwined with the destiny of all Americans. We are in this boat. Yes, we might have attachments to Uganda and we'll continue to have those, but home first. We live here. We should start considering this place as home. And in the end, that actually will also help our motherland. Because when we become good advocates of that place, maybe next time there will be an executive order that will exempt Uganda. Mm-hmm. But Uganda also has to embrace us, like I said. Embrace us. Let us feel the love. Let us feel the welcome. Okay, this, and someone just hinted at it, this idea of always picking the incompetent people because they are loyal. These Ugandans moving themselves and taking to state themselves because they have connections. They go to state house. Oh, we're representing Ugandans in the US. Who are these Ugandans you're representing? Okay. How come the cultural leader of Bakasara is at the inauguration, but the minister is not? Mm-hmm. Because I've worked with the Bakasara, I know exactly how that man got in that room. Because those are not people who are parading themselves to go to Museveni saying we'll do this and that. But they have connections. They're lawyers, they're doctors. I've met with them, I've worked with them, especially when I was in UNA. Okay, we sat on this on the UNA Constitutional Commission with about 4 or 5 Bamasaras. Okay, I know exactly how that man got in that room. Okay, and if we are empowered as a community, we can get others in the right rooms. Maybe we'll also have some clout. Okay, real clout, not this one that is being transactional, people parading themselves because they have connections. So again, everyone has said the right things today. I think this has been one of the most informative sessions. And I thank Simon, I thank you, Francis, and I thank Kharim. And thank you, Miriam, for stepping in. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. Yeah, this has been very fun. I hope someone is taking notes, especially people in Kampala. Kharim, your concluding remarks, please.
Oh, thank you so much, Elder Albert. I'll give you that now. Fully. Salt and pepper. Okay, my concluding remarks would be to the African countries that are going to be affected with the recent development from Washington. I think there is need for African countries to maximize the African Continental Free Trade Area. For the past maybe 2-3 years, it has been growing, and the trade within those African countries has reached about 192 billion. So we have been seeing countries like South Africa trading in electronics with Kenya. We've seen countries like Rwanda sending coffee to Ghana and Morocco. Uganda has been sending milk to Algeria. There is need now to maximize, to cooperate, to stop fighting our neighbors, and figure out a way we can uh, um, um, a way we can celebrate our independence and sovereignty by working within our African states and African cooperations. There is urgent need for us to rethink on how we are going to handle emergencies. I don't know whether AU, the African Union, is taking notes on how we should think of emergencies, because if anything happens right now and we don't have the necessary funds, emergency funds to take care of our people, it might be worse. Now, for the Ugandans and the Africans here in the diaspora, like Albert said, there is need for us to engage from local level to the federal level. Most of the times we are here, but we don't even know who is the local council in the small town that you live in. What's the setup? How can we engage them? How do we get to understand the political, social, and cultural issues within our community? We shouldn't base all our knowledge on what we see on social media, but we should be actively engaging. I know that DEI table has been flipped over, but now there is need to show face, because if you're not there and you're going to wait until when that table comes back, you will have no seat at all. So there is need for us to actively engage within our communities, from the local to the federal level, in case we can help our people back home. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kharim. Yes, we really need to engage, and it's really very important, that call of us participating in the local politics, the local politics in the countries we live in. If we don't, nobody's going to plan for us, nobody's going to think for us, and we're going to be left out. And this, if COVID, during the COVID was an example, it really showed us how the immigrant communities were neglected in those emergency policies and rescue missions they put up. Francis, your conclusive remarks, and sorry about your organization, which is already being affected by the cuts.
Oh, thank you, Lynn and Simon, Kharim, and Elder Bakasara for all these insights. I would say in conclusion that the baseline is for us as people in the diaspora and wherever we are, even locally, to get involved in issues that concern us and issues of national and global importance. That is something that is very important, and everyone has hinted about it. Secondly, I would also urge our African leaders, and we are also leaders, if they can take advantage of utilizing people who are in the diaspora and also tap into what we would call strategic leadership. because we have a lot that would exchange. When they talk of foreign aid, there I mean foreign aid or transfer of knowledge and technology, it will pass through us who are in the diaspora, that we can even exchange ideas. How do things work? What can we do? And so on. So I think there should be a forum, or each country should be that, than basing on opportunists who go and parade themselves even when there is nothing of value that they can contribute other than self-interest, and that is not healthy for the country. Then I'm a supporter that if Africa, like as how we are trading amongst ourselves, there is an African trade currency that I don't need to go to South Africa and I change money to, and I begin dealing with forex bureaus. If our leaders think alongside those lines, like some kind of uniform currency in Africa, I think even it can give us an advantage of competing over a dollar. I would be very happy to see even the Americans or people who are in other countries going to Africa to trade, but they also go to change the money, because we are selling our goods and so on in terms of our African currency. But that might be a long term, but it is doable. We can do it, but otherwise getting involved, I agree, even where we are, that's how you find the Somalis were able to push somebody to Congress here. So for us, even where we stay as people in the diaspora, we still have a heavy lift to do to ensure that our impact and contribution is felt wherever we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis, and thank you, all our panelists, Honorable Simon Mulongo from Kampala, Albert Bakasara from Washington, Elder Albert, Kharim Ntambi is from also Washington, but is a NUP member, and Francis, thank you so much from ANT Party. It's been a pleasure talking to you and hosting you on behalf of Lynn, who wasn't able to be with us, but she will be back next time. And have a nice weekend. Stay warm. It's still free here in Ohio, so